Welcome back to another video on the leading ladies of the Word. In this section of our series, we're going through leading ladies from the New Testament. And another lady I want to talk about is Phoebe. Phoebe was a leading lady in the early church. Couldn't find many great pictures of Phoebe online, but here's a mosaic of Phoebe. And we find her mentioned in Romans chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. Paul says, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon in the church in Cenchrea. I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way worthy of his people, and to give her any help she may need from you, for she has been the benefactor of many people, including me. Well, there's a number of things to say about this little snippet in Paul's letter to the Romans. First of all, the reason that Paul is commending Phoebe to them is because she is the one delivering the letter to the Romans. Now that itself is a huge task. I mean, Romans is the most famous of all of Paul's letters in our day, and so for her to be the one to deliver Romans meant that Paul had great trust in her ability to deliver the message the way that he wanted to the church. And so I think that there's probably more that goes into the delivery of a letter than we might anticipate. Not only is it Paul trusting her to get the letter to the church in Rome, but many scholars think that the one who was assigned this task of delivering a letter like this would have also had the responsibility of reading it to the churches in Rome, the local churches, and being the first interpreter of the letter, because this would have been somebody who was with Paul when he wrote the letter, most likely. And so she has this role of delivering the letter, but also delivering the truth of the letter. And so if somebody had a question, what does Paul mean by that, as she read the letter, she would be able to speak to that question. And so this was a very important role. It makes sense then that he chose somebody that was an official leader in the church, or a minister that he had full trust in. So it says she's a deacon of the church in Cenchrea. Now some translations don't use the word deacon there. They use the word servant. And but it's really just the regular word for deacon. It's just not a feminine word. It's a masculine term. But she was filling the role of deacon. And so she was already an official leader. She had an official role in the church in Cenchrea. And so Paul is going to use her skills and her abilities and her gifts to bring this letter to the church in Rome. And he wants them to treat her well, because she's a huge help. In fact, it says she's been a big help to Paul. And here it says that she has been a benefactor of many people. And that word can be translated sometimes even as a leader. Paul says, including to me. So she has been a huge help to Paul and to others. So James Dunn, in his commentary on Romans, says, Phoebe is the first recorded deacon in the history of the church. Now, that's worth pointing out. Sometimes people say, well, there's no women that are mentioned by name as elders in the church. Well, there's really no men that are mentioned as elders specifically by name. And we don't have lists of male deacons. We just have the idea that men were deacons. But women could be deacons too, and Phoebe is an example of that because she's listed as a deacon. She's the first one listed by name as a deacon in the history of Christianity. N.T. Wright says, the implication is that Phoebe is a businesswoman who is able to travel independently, and for Paul to trust her with a letter like this speaks volumes for the respect in which she was held. So it is no surprise to discover that she is a deacon in the church. N.T. Wright also says, Paul entrusted that letter to a deacon called Phoebe, whose work was taking her to Rome. The letter bearer would normally be the one to read it out to the recipients and to explain its contents. The first expositor of Paul's greatest letter was an ordained traveling businesswoman. So this great letter of Romans, he entrusts to this person who had been ordained into the role of deacon and was kind of an independent businesswoman who had the means of traveling, and she delivers Romans and probably delivers communication about its meaning. And so once again, we have seen a lady who was an active part of the early church that Paul fully trusted to perform important roles in the church, including speaking roles and even interpretive roles in his, what we would call his most important letter, the letter to the church in Rome. So she's just another great example of a leading lady of the word.